Yes, hello everyone. Yeah, I'm Sol, and I'm here to talk a little bit about the Pluto polarity point, which I understood was a juicy, hot subject among the EA fan group. You know, those who are avid fans of the evolutionary astrology paradigm, which is extremely interesting from a spiritual point of view, because it's really something, evolutionary astrology is really something that is, it is talking about what is actually essential for a person in their lives. And we deal with a lot of unessential stuff during a lifetime, and we deal with all these, there's all these different disturbances, and we are almost as if life is conspiring to keep us distracted so that we won't look into the deeper matters of things. And that's how we call it bread and circus. That's a pretty known phenomenon. And therefore a lot of people tend to stay away from the deeper Pluto material, because anyone who survived a Pluto transit knows it's not for amateurs, it's for professional people who are really ready to work deeper into their own psyche, ready to deal with their subconscious patterns, ready to deal with the past, ready to deal with the weaknesses that prevent the soul from entering. And I know there's disagreements in the evolutionary environment, astrological school environment, because some people are saying, like the Jeffrey Wolf Green school is saying that Pluto is the soul. And I come from another fraction of that same thought, and it's Maurice Fernandez's school. And he states a little differently. He states that Pluto is the impulse of the soul, which is, well, you have to sort of reflect what that means. But for me, it means that there is there's this enzyme in our lives that creates these transformational changes so that the soul can come through. And we have that fascinating subject of soul groups that also comes in through Pluto. When we are thinking and talking about Pluto, we are talking about groups of people, because it's a generational planet. So it really stays immensely long in each sign, so although it varies depending on where in the cycle it is. It can stay up to 30 years, I think, in one sign, and then it can stay as little as 11 years in other signs. And thank God that's the sign of Scorpio. Scorpio, with 30 years of Scorpio in, Pluto in Scorpio, and everybody would go crazy. So that was enough. When God decided that 11 years is enough in Scorpio, they will, I'll be a little nice. So that was in the 80s. We all remember that. In this, this period of Thatcher and Reagan and everything, we're still trying to figure out what happened then, because everything, the liberalization of the economy, for instance, happened around then. And you have that Pluto in Scorpio generation really have to, work hard to find work, to find valuable, they work really deeply with these Scorpio energies. And the Pluto, the Pluto paradigm is there in a way, even though we cannot say precisely what is the soul, because the soul, if you go to esoteric teachings, you see the soul is bigger than the entire astrological chart. The chart is merely a reflection of the persona, the personality that you created in this life. Although, if we look at this from a soul perspective, we incarnate in groups. So there is something here that I find very fascinating with this group energy, Pluto energy. And I will not go so deep into what exactly Pluto is, because I guess we just have to keep on working with the material to see, just keep on evolving the material. But at least, there is something that I find extremely interesting that comes from the material of Jeffrey Wolf Green, and that is the whole concept of polarity points. Not just polarity points for Pluto, because I'm very into polarity therapy. This is not in the ordinary sense we know polarity therapy from, as we know it as as a profession, but more in the sense of how I see the astrological chart, the yin and the yang, the polarities between, for instance, Leo and Aquarius, between Gemini and Sagittarius, Cancer and Capricorn. Everything in the chart is like a coin with two sides to it. And you will see that the deeper you go into evolutionary astrology, you will see that all the energies, especially the sun, goes through this meeting the opposite side of the coin. You know, there's so many people who thinks that I'm a Leo, actually. You know, I'm Aquarius, and they think I'm a Leo. I mean, this is what I often hear, you know, maybe because I have like 350 billion fire planets on my sun. I don't know, it could be, but at least, you know, I know that I'm pulled towards the sign of Leo to find completion to my sun energy. So I'm one of these people who are taking this theory of polarity points even further. I want to see if, okay, do we have, for instance, and could we apply this theory of polarity point to the rest of the chart as well, especially the sun? You know, let's keep it simple, but especially the sun. Is it also something like, because evolutionary astrology is all about process, it's all about the process we go through in life, how we evolve, how we go from one point to the other. And if anything, Pluto is process. You know, it's definitely a journey we are going on. If we look at I didn't bring that graphic though, but if we look at the graphic of Pluto in its orb around the solar system, I remember first time I saw this, I said to my father, oh my God, it's like Pluto is the moon of the solar system, because you have like the solar system, it's you know, all the planets are on this disk we call the ecliptic. They're all like, if you had like a plate, they're all going around the sun on this, more or less this disk, you know, it's all on the same plane. Except Pluto, which is like going in the underworld and up, and then it's crossing the ecliptic. And it's going up and down, you know, it's going into the underworld and then to the upper world and the underworld and the upper world. So, and I thought, like, that reminds me of the moon. It reminds me of how the moon orbits the earth. And it's really like something that I thought was so fascinating. And that's when you can see that it's really Pluto is this incredibly important place, you know, planet in the chart of the individual. It's really showing these life and death transformational movements that we go through. And the polarity point in itself is just another way of going into that kind of process, of understanding this kind of process, to understand exactly what it means to evolve. You know, what does it mean for us? What is evolution, you know? And, you know, if we hadn't had that, it's all the polarity points is almost like a Libra principle. If we didn't have that Libra energy coming in sometimes and just pulling us out of ourself and forcing us to see things from a bigger point of view, we would never have any oh, there it is. Isn't that beautiful? Thank you, Linda. That is so, you're so awake. Thank you. That's so brilliant. There you go. You see how it is? It's crossing the ecliptic, and it's really so beautiful how it's taking us into the underworld and then up again to the upper world. And that's life. And that's life, how we go through it. Oh my God, this sweater is making me itch. I have also, if you can just stop that screen sharing, because I have my little PowerPoint I want to show. Thank you. All right, so let's see my there we go. I will just bring in some definitions. We like definitions, huh? I always have to figure out how to do this. Excuse me. There. Oh, it was hidden. There. All right, so Pluto is the generational vibration a person comes with, as well as the individual's patterns in identity associations implied from the evolutionary past, the desires, beliefs, thoughts, perception, values, and orientation to life itself. And just like the moon is a container of the past on a personal level, right? We associate in evolutionary astrology with the past, we associate South Node, Pluto, and the moon. These are the three indications of karmic past. You could also add in Saturn if you like. You know, a lot of people work with this as the karmic trigger. That's more, I tend to look at not at Saturn as necessarily like the karma, because the entire chart shows the karma. It shows the habits and patterns that you come in with. But you might say that Pluto, the moon, and the South Node are these default mechanisms that are just there. It's just a default. It's subconscious, default, security-oriented mechanisms. And it's very important, this word security, because this is what we feel safe with. So if you come from an abusive past, let's say you have Pluto in Virgo in the 12th house on the South Node, if you come, and which can mean like victimization and deep trauma related to being sacrificed in earlier lives, because the 12th house is this you don't matter house. Your ego is not important. You have no, there's this egolessness with the 12th house, and you have that Pluto in Virgo, persecution, abuse, masochism energy that is the dark side of Virgo. You will have perhaps a person that comes in who finds great safety and relief and comfort in being in abusive relationships, which is rather weird, because who would want to be there? But as my dear father, and I will quote him again, said, anything that's repeated makes up security. If it's just repeated long enough, it creates security. So it's like footprints in the snow. When you walked over and over and over again the same path, it will be the path of least resistance. This is often something we love to term the South Node, Pluto, and the Moon. I like to compare it with the software that is already on your phone when you buy it. You have these annoying programs that nobody ever uses, and it's like you can't get them away because it's built into the system, and there's no way they can't be deleted. Well, thank God, since Pluto is the planet of death, it's really actually going after these patterns that South Node, the Moon, our habits, our beliefs, and the actuals, the Pluto placement in itself, it's going after that core issue that we are trying to solve, that is just running without our conscious permission. And it's trying to kill it. It's killing everything that stands in the path of the soul, because the soul itself, the true power that you are, is not necessarily, it has to be freed, right? It's not it's a very loving, it has to be freed. It's love. It's dharma. When the soul comes through, you go from karma to dharma. You find your path in life. You realize who you are on a much deeper level. You get to that point in yourself where you're ready to use that type of power. So, therefore, Pluto transformation is also related to empowerment, how we become more powerful in our own lives. And before that happens, of course, Pluto goes into that part of being the one who reveals everything that's not working in your own life. He reveals the lacks, what you lack in your life, where you are feeling lacking, where you are feeling stopped, blocked, prevented, the sabotage, the saboteur. And it's often, sometimes people think like, it's like that feeling of utter failure when you really try so hard and nothing really works, because these subconscious patterns just hits in and create magnetism, so that you keep attracting the same kind of situation over and over again, because that's the nature of the emotional body. When it's really, really intensely saturated with belief, it creates a gravity, it creates it's like that law of attraction we didn't want existed. I want to have like a zillion, billion, trillion dollars on my bank account, and I can just get it by winning the lottery. And if I think about it long enough, that will happen eventually. But of course, the subconscious says, well, you were born to be poor, that's never going to happen. So you have that kind of sabotaging energy that prevents you from attracting what you really truly desire in your life. And it is that energy that is, in a way, triggering us to look deeper into our own belief system. As Jeffrey says here, it's beliefs, what we truly believe. And it's really difficult because we really believe it, and we can't just replace one belief with another like that, because if we create a negative belief, and it's sort of like we had to have this negative belief because we had an experience that was negative to us, and we were rejected or abandoned, and somebody died and we lost something. It sort of strengthens this belief because, look, reality just proved it to me. I'm not worth it. And you can't just, because that would be like pretending, to have a better life than you actually have, would be to import a new kind of belief. I now believe that I can, for instance, always with Pluto, it's the relationship to money, for instance, or with power, personal power in general. Now I believe suddenly that I can earn a lot of money. And you're constantly reminded, but that's not the reality. The reality is that you're not making a lot of money, for instance. So how can you do that? How can you get away from the repetition of the loop and let the spiral occur? Thank God we have Uranus for helping us to go to a deeper consciousness and have more light into the darkness. And we have these other energies that comes in. But just looking from Pluto point of view, it is truly where we can feel very stuck. And there is this kind of, in a way, extreme help to get from the polarity point, because we are so sort of embedded in the archetype of the Pluto position. We are so identified with it. It has been such a large portion of our past. And with this energy that is so, it's like, I once read something in the Pluto book, which, was so descriptive of Pluto energy, and was that Pluto is it's the bass beat. You can't almost hear it. It's the bass drum. Boom, 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 boom. It just sort of settles a really deep beat, and it's influencing the entire piece of music. And perhaps all we hear or notice is that the vocalist and the song and the melody and then, the niceties on top. But really what's mastering the entire rhythm is the deep beat of Pluto. So when we have, it is so ironic that today the Venus is opposing my Venus retrograde is opposing my Pluto on the degree. I'm like, I wonder what this day is going to be like. Oh, and then I realized, I'm going to have like a Pluto polarity point thing. That's so interesting because it's on my Pluto polarity point. It's in Aries, and it's like, what are the chances? Another wonderful manifestation of the magic of astrology. It's really magical. And just for information, I had a great day. I just had a wonderful day. It was a really passionate, lovely, I dare say almost a little sexy day. Yeah, I have my red lipstick on. I'm really, I had a great day. So it was just not sexy in the sense that, there was a lot of flirting going on, but just, dancing and having fun and just being as Aries is. And that's really good because I come from Pluto in Libra, and that's air. So that's always thinking, weighing, not doing, just not acting, just being, sometimes caught in the limbo. And for me today with this Aries energy, it's just been doing, acting, creating, being. It's very freeing, right? So it's very freeing from that Libra energy that is, could drive you crazy. And to be born with Pluto in Libra is very, very annoying. I do not recommend it at all. It's like if you have to make a choice. It's like, I don't know what I want. I don't know who I am. And it's really difficult. And I spent so much time in my life, especially in relationships, to really understand what is it that I want and who do I want to be with and what is my heart saying, where's the fire, everything that is so difficult. Like, yeah, but if I do this, then something, like that. Sometimes you have that crisis in Libra that it's impossible to make choices. So luckily for me, there's been a lot of stuff going on in Aries the last couple of years. Like now we have had Uranus in Aries, and we have all these energies now for the time being that's going through in Aries. And I'm really feeling this great, lovely feeling that I know exactly what my heart wants. I know exactly what my heart beats for. And it's so good. It is like, yes, I'm no longer under the spell of the negative energies of Pluto in Libra energy. Like there is a level to everything when you come up again from the underworld, from all the work that you do with your own Pluto. And believe me, I know exactly how that feels. Like, will it never end? Will I be here forever? Like, it could be so rough to work with these energies. Like for instance, like there was this period where Pluto squared Uranus, and there were so many clients who came in with Pluto-Uranus conjunction. And then you had all that energy going on in Pisces, which sort of like Pluto in Virgo, they have to go to Pisces. And it's like this control and this need for working all the time. And there's these great issues with shame and if you read the Pluto book, you know that Jeffrey describes Pluto in Virgo generation as almost being one of the 12 disciples around Christ. That's how Puritan the energy is. It's really, really Puritan complexes. And that's the dark side of it. And whenever we talk about Pluto, whenever we talk about the South Node moon and Pluto, we talk about the subconscious aspects of any sign. And also, as we are very familiar with in evolutionary astrology, that is simply genius. It's the distortion of the archetypes. When you have like Virgo has gone through massive distortions during these numerous cultures that we've lived. And what was once the sensual, beautiful lady, wonderful, fertile symbol of a lady almost, that is Virgo, a very well, a free lady, like it's a feminine energy that is equipped with capacity and skill. And it's deeply in the body. It's really, it reminds me a little bit about Vesta energy, this sacred, making things sacred. It's cleansing everything. It's cleaning the body, and it's healing, but it's really in the body. And therefore, it's also related to sexuality. And we know that, for instance, sexuality has not been demonized as we have had to see sexuality being demonized the last 2,000 years. So when you get Pluto in Virgo generation going through a Pluto polarity point transits, you get somebody who's really having to open up again to this place where they might be infected by some sexual disease. Fear is coming up because they are finally opening up sexually, or they have this, I will not do, like Pisces sometimes does, you know, I will not work for an entire week. I will just smell the flowers. I will just travel without a map. I will go without a plan. I'll just relax and be, you know, for a couple of weeks. And that's not a Pluto in Virgo thing, you know, it's that, oh, can I do that? I have to justify my existence every breath I take, you know, that's Pluto in Virgo. But yeah, of course, you don't have to do anything. That's Pisces, you know, you can just relax and have a nice time, have a glass of wine, enjoy yourself, kick off your shoes, chill. You know, Zen, that's the moment, that's the spirit of Pisces. Just be, you know, it's easy. And that's so difficult for Pluto and Virgo. So nice to see when you get transits to this kind of position that you have your polarity, where you have your polarity point, because you get some extra birth help to be freed from what once was security, but it doesn't mean that this security was good for you. You know, perhaps it's preventing you from realizing your true potential or your heart's desires, etc. You know, so it is coming back to the soul again. Jeffrey, he speaks a lot about these separative desires versus the desire to go back to the source again. Like there's a dual impulse in the soul. That's how he describes it. I think that's really nice, because he's really catching something that is a principle in life. Yes, if we take that kind of thought, that line of thought, and we bring it into the Buddhist thought, for instance, which a lot of evolutionary astrology actually came from this line of thinking. You know, you have that being in the body, dukkha, pain, suffering. That's how they describe it. Being, just because you're in the body and you are identified with your senses and your instincts and your, you know, the survival mechanisms of the body. You know, the body is, if you look at the adrenals, for instance, it's really designed to simply protect itself from being from dying. The immunity system, it's the same. You know, the whole organism is self-defensive, and that's not the idea of the soul. The soul is a group-oriented consciousness. It's love. Love is unity. It is, you know, it's I often say the soul is beyond business. It doesn't know business. The body knows business because business is there for us to survive. So because we are identified with the body, we are actually living in it, and it would be nice that it survived. So it's okay to feed it. But, you know, like, that's the over-identification of these material values that is the problem. You know, we split from the soul, and this split, this fall, this is what I think Jeffrey is talking about when he's speaking of this dual impulse of the soul. So he's just, but it's like these separative desires. This is what Scorpio tells all about. It's the you know, the 9 heads of the Hydra that Hercules have to endure when he comes into the cave, and, you know, his task, he has to kill, you know, he has 12 tasks, Hercules. And when he comes to Scorpio, he comes to Hydra, and Hydra represents these 3 appetites that we have: sex, comfort, and money. And it's that, you know, these 9 heads, it's these passions of fear, hatred, and desires for power. Like, I want everything for myself, and you know, I just want to have an easy life. It's that passion for comfort, you know, just want to have a lot of sex. I just want to have that sexual partner. It's that kind of desire for a new phone, and when you get it, it's like fun for a week maybe, and then it's not fun anymore. And you can see how this, just take away this, the 9 heads of the Hydra. 3 of these heads symbolize the appetites associated with sex, comfort, and money, right? Give me enough sex, give me enough, I don't want pain. Think about the desire we sometimes have for staying away from pain. You know, like, I don't want to change because that implies pain. Well, then I'm not going to change. I don't want to change because I don't have enough money. Well, then you're not going to change. You know, I don't want to change this relationship because the sex actually works. You know, well, then you're not going to change. All right, so the second tree group concerns the passions of fear, hatred, and desires for power, you know? The passions of fear. I love that. You know, we have such a passion for fear on Earth. That's why we watch so many soaps. And we love to see stuff that, you know, we like. It's just that kind of indulging in the fear, you know? And then also we have that hatred going on. Always we have to hate somebody. That's also interesting. And then we have that super intense desire for power. Like, I just want power. Why? Because power it's really big, you know, it's security, right? So the last three heads represent the vices of the unillumined mind: pride, separativeness, and cruelty. So these are the 9 heads of the Hydra, and it's really interesting how they bring in this, you know, that's the separative desires actually that Jeffrey is talking about. When you get it, it sort of satisfies you, but then just for a little while. When you get revenge, it can sort of, it's almost like, it's like having a mosquito bite and you know that you shouldn't scratch it, but still you do, right? And it's so satisfying for just a little while, and then it starts to itch even more. And it's like, that's just annoying. Then suddenly your whole arm is like, you have to go to the hospital. Pulling it a little far there, but that's the idea, you know. That's the problem with these things. Imagine sex as well. Look at the porn industry, for instance. Oh my God, how hard do you want it? I mean, the menu is there. Yes, you can just zoom through. If you want to see weird stuff, it's right there. And the more overstimulated you are, the harder it needs to get. Same with sugar, right? So we have these desire natures that is, it's connected to the body and the senses and survival and the idea that we are separate. And this is the separative desires. So of course, you know, that's one of the crises in with Pluto, is that we keep having these desires that not necessarily are good for us, you know, that not necessarily are what we need, but we think we need them. When you get, I mean, he wrote that beautiful song, "When you get what you want but not what you need." That's exactly Pluto. That was Coldplay. And you have to lose whatever you don't need. Why do you need it? You know, you have to lose it. It's preventing your soul growth. It's preventing the soul to enter. The soul doesn't know any business. It knows only love. The soul is love. Right? So that's really something humanity is still not, you know, it's still not getting. Let's see what we have here. Yeah. Yes, we've gone through that one. All right, so this is Pluto and Charon. It's that, you know, the two buddies out there, and it's also interesting how they sort of operate as one. You know, they again, we're talking about a principle of duality that is coming in the physical form as well, like, and the duality of being human, because being human means such a paradox. You know, it means having this subconscious truth, having an inner life that is hidden, and then you have an outer expression that is well, of course, visible. It is like, you know, it's naked. If you have the same kind of, if you have a feeling, I have nothing to hide, then the inner and the outer would be in equal balance. There would be no pressure. But since, and this is something I often find with a lot of Pluto placements, is that there's so much hidden energy in this, like, oh, but I can't say that, and I can't do this, and I can't, like, all the taboos, everything that's hidden. And then you get that tension on the inner levels, and then you get that need to hide and to lie and to cover yourself, because otherwise you'll be seen. That's why people freak out when they come around people who really love, because love is such an undressing power. It's really opening up. And I think, that's the whole evolution of humanity. It's coming to a place where we are whole in ourselves, and it's enough what we are. We are plenty. We're it. That's it. We are home again. We're back again from the separation, and we're back to the source. The source is the soul. The soul is connected to spirit. So there's nowhere to go. So this is like, I have a whole bunch of Pluto polarity point, first house, everything. I don't know, what time are we on? I have to check. I have a quarter of an hour. I thought perhaps this could be material for two yes, I think it will be better if we just share this in two different. I can do one with Pluto in the houses, and next time, for instance. So maybe we just open up for some questions, or anybody has any questions to this Pluto polarity point thing? Anything you want to ask about, something you wondered about?
Okay.
Hi, Wanda, was that you?
Yes, I had a question on when you have planets conjunct that, natal planets conjunct that Pluto polarity point. And then when there's transits to that point. For instance, some of us with the Pluto in Virgo also have Saturn and Chiron conjunct the Pluto polarity point.
That's just a really interesting generation. It is such an important, that is such a great question, again, back to the flip-flopping between the past and the future. And of course, with Chiron and Saturn opposing Pluto and Uranus in Virgo, Pisces, you get this necessity of embodying and healing the polarity point. Chiron will be like, oh, but this energy is completely inaccessible to me. It's like, I cannot find that peace that is Pisces. Pisces is peace. It's being at peace with life. It's really saying, all right, so it's not perfect, but it's life, and it's like, there's this feeling with Pisces that you don't have to necessarily clean up everything. You could just leave it as it is. You don't have to clean it up everything. And with Saturn there as well, there's this a real deep sense that you really have to deal with this Pisces energy in a fruitful and constructive way. It's really, Saturn is really demanding that you don't take off and go into la la land. And with Saturn in Pisces, you really get this energy with having to figure out what is really truth. What is my conditions telling me? It's really dealing with a lot of religious trauma and abuse and conditioning, because these are both mutable signs. They are both related to knowledge, and with the distortion of Virgo going on, with all that shame and the guilt and having to justify your existence, etc. The Saturn in Pisces is really because pulling out this. So what is the law? What is moral? What is it being? What does it mean being a moral human being? What is morality? That's Saturn's domain here, because if we just isolate Saturn in Pisces would love to know the truth. Not just any truth, the ultimate truth. They want to know exactly what is man-made of the laws that we are living under, and what is God's laws. They want to know exactly what was on those stone tablets. Yeah. So it's really seeking truth, and that's just to heal the whole I'd say almost the whole rupture of energy that has been going on in Virgo and Pisces, all the hundreds of years that these two signs have undergone like this religious, scientific distortion energy. And we forgot what spirit was, and we forgot what God is, and we didn't have an experience of God. So we just had like a sinful kind of, dogma on one side. And if you go to the atheism and the scientific religion, you will see that they only have like 1 and 1 is 2 and nothing else exists. And that doesn't offer us any real clue about what life is. So it's really finding out these things in order to be free from distortions and illusions and grief that comes from these distortions and these illusions. So it's really such a deep healing that goes on in this particular generation. It's so completely necessary for everyone born with this particular configuration to take it up to the next level in terms of really understanding what spirituality is about, really understanding what Jesus actually said, and really understanding what it means to be alive and what creation is. And then this energy can function in a loving or harmonious or peaceful way. So it's really, finding peace with life. I know particularly Chiron in Pisces is extremely challenging. We have this for the time being, and I'm not the only one who thinks it will be nice that we can get that thing over, get it all right. We want it into Aries now because it's that feeling that everything is broken and it's beyond repair and nothing can be fixed again. Like there's no food left and the ocean is full of plastic, and it's really feeding into the guilt of Pluto in Virgo already. Like, oh, what did we do to Earth? Like it's their fault or like your fault or something, So it's really like dealing crazy with these guilt issues and just being really hardcore when it comes to taking responsibility. So are you there to carry the cross of humanity for all of humanity? How do we do this? How do we take responsibility for creation, and how do we not victimize ourselves in that process? So it's not an easy consciousness. It really needs healing. It's not this configuration is as Jeffrey would say, oh, there's some trauma. There's some trauma in the soul, the rude awakenings. Oh my God, I did this. Oh, did I do that? Like the rude awakenings of Uranus is that suddenly awakening to a bigger truth, suddenly realizing that actually, yes, you actually did play a part in this big drama, catastrophe, energy thing, and you have to be aware of this because then you won't do it again. Oh, okay. So if you had love, that would be no problem. Okay, I made a mistake. It's an honest thing. Nah, but it doesn't work like that. You have to pay. So you have to do like 400 Ave Marias, and then you have to hang on a cross, and you have to bleed for all of humanity, and you have to die for them and do shit like that. You're really carrying the sinfulness in this energy. And that's, of course, because there is no true understanding of what love is. Yeah. So that's the whole healing energy with this particular opposition, and it's really I think from an evolutionary point of view, when there's planets on, like when there's transits to this point, which you also asked of, you get immense help to get the whole dynamics. Just it's like a big massage of that whole consciousness. And when we think of Chiron, for instance, would you want to massage a wound that is ancient? Not many people would do that voluntarily, no, right? They have to have some sort of illness involved, or something like really that forcing them to work with this material. And I'm saying this is one of the principles that really helped me a lot with, I can thank Jeffrey for this. He said, you could either go the conscious way, say, yes, please, resistance is futile, and you can do the erosion way, or you could do the subconscious resistance way, and you can say, no, thank you, please let me be alone, I want the status quo. And you go the explosion or volcano way, where everything is just crumbling. So of course, that's the evolutionary levels. That's what makes or breaks, if it's a catastrophe or if it's a success, this process of life. So, that's also relating to what experience you will have when there's a transit to these points. Sometimes it's just super fun to work with Pluto because you're there, you're conscious, you want to evolve, you want to look at this shit thing called your subconscious. You want to see your fears because you're ready now. You have enough love to not go on a guilt trip relating to the mistakes you made yesterday, right? That's just so important if you want to evolve. And then it can be quite intense, that's how you recognize it, like, oh, there's intensity in this transit, yes, but I'm learning so much, like I'm learning how to transform this energy and not let it be stuck in the basement where it's just killing me. I'm learning transformation, and that's what we learn, especially with Pluto transits to the polarity point, because as I said initially, Pluto polarity point is process oriented. It's all about process. Process means going from one place in consciousness to evolve to the next level. Something has to be left behind, and that's just super intense if we hold on very strongly, of course, and if we don't want to see. But if we are willing and wanting and we're ready, and it's okay for us to make mistakes, then it's okay for us to work with these energies too. I'm one of those people who are so eager to kill off some of the stuff we normally just say. We say it because it's a habit and it sounds cool. Like we're almost, oh, Mercury retrograde, please do something with your hard drive. I'm like, be original, write something new about Mercury retrograde, please, and we can fall in the trap of creating these archetypes in a negative sense because we like the drama. So we could say, oh, Pluto transit, poor you, talk to you in 10 years, you're done then. Woo. And that's like, it's not healthy, so just focusing in on the utmost potential of any transit is just such a healing work and so nice to do. So this is something we probably should take into consideration, not to paint everything pink and say it's going to be wonderful, you're going to have so much transformation, and people are crying and really belching out their pain, and really going through, but my best friend died, how can you say this, and there's we have to allow these emotional purifications that is Pluto, but it's still something nice, I'm trying to hold space for intensity. And I recently just shared a little bit about my day. I really had like a transit to my polarity point today in a Venus retrograde, and I'm born with Venus retrograde. I've hated these Venus retrograde periods because I just had to look at myself in ways that like the bad days energies, not feeling good about yourself, no, all that energy coming up. And I'm born with Pluto in Libra, so I have like this super intense Venus energy in my charts. And today it was just like a day where I felt I was, there was so much going on in my field, like there was this fear of a rejection related to somebody that I really love. But I don't know, where did it come from? I was like a virus that passed me. And I just tried to hold space for it. I just tried to see, what is this? Where is this go? What is trying to kill me on the inner levels here? And this is why we should be so super aware of what goes on in our field when we have these intense transits, because it's the intensity of being aware of your own destructiveness, for instance, And that's just, if you over-identify with it, it's just going to be very, very painful. If you go in with a little detachment, a little curiosity, a little wanting to understand what this really is, then it's going to be immensely different. You're going to release, you're going to transform, you're going to heal. It's going to be golden again. It's Tantra. That's the definition of Tantra. Give me something dirty, I'll breathe it out clean again. So, but of course, it's not for anyone. And I now have 2 minutes, and there's no time for another question. But if you have another question, save it for next time, because then I can do all the houses if it's interesting for you. Yeah. Just
okay, great.
Great. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much, Sol. That was fantastic. Thanks so much.
Good. All right.
Okay, and so, yeah, any final thoughts or?
No, nothing else. Then I would love to just continue with this workshop next time, and I can do Pluto going through all the houses. And if you have any questions related to this, then please just remember them, and we'll bring it up then. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Looking forward to that. Thank you very much, and thank you from all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nice seeing you again, by the way.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Evening and goodbye.
Goodbye.